You've been showing up with a smile while fighting a silent battle no one sees. You've been holding it together while everything in you wants to fall apart. You've been pushing through the pain, pretending you're fine, but deep down you're tired, mentally, emotionally, spiritually tired. But what if I told you that God sees that? That heaven has not been ignoring your exhaustion, and the same God who watched you pour out will now pour back into you. This is not the end of your story. This is the moment before restoration. You've cried enough tears, fought enough silent wars, and doubted yourself enough times. But God sent me to tell you he knows you're tired, and he's about to restore you. Asterisk, asterisk, intro, in Sarah Jakes Roberts style. Asterisk, asterisk, you've been showing up with a smile while fighting a silent battle no one sees. You've been holding it together while everything in you wants to fall apart. You've been pushing through the pain, pretending you're fine, but deep down you're tired, mentally, emotionally, spiritually tired. But what if I told you that God sees that? That heaven has not been ignoring your exhaustion, and the same God who watched you pour out will now pour times back into you, asterisk. This is not the end of your story. This is the moment before restoration. You've cried enough tears, fought enough silent wars, and doubted yourself enough times, but God sent me to tell you he knows you're tired and he's about to restore you. Asterisk, asterisk, 5. Keynotes don't. Expand, asterisk, asterisk, 1. God sees your silent exhaustion even when people don't. 2. Restoration begins where surrender happens. 3. What broke you was not meant to destroy you, it was meant to shape you. 4. God's rest is not just physical, it's spiritual alignment. 5. You're stepping into divine recovery, double for your trouble. Asterisk, asterisk, keynote, no one, expanded into 650 words, no headings, no ending sentences. Asterisk, asterisk, sometimes the hardest part of the journey is realizing that no one around you really sees what it's costing you to keep going. You show up, you love, you serve, you give, and yet the weight gets heavier each day. You tell yourself you're okay because that's what strong people do. But late at night, when the noise fades and the lights go out, you feel it, the ache that words can't fix. That deep soul fatigue that comes from carrying more than what you were ever meant to carry. And I came to tell you that God sees it. Every sigh, every tear, every moment you wanted to quit but didn't, he saw it all. You've been running on empty, thinking that maybe if you just keep pushing, something will shift. You've convinced yourself that you can't stop now because too many people are counting on you. You've learned to perform strength when you really need healing. But God is whispering to your spirit even now, I see you. He's not impressed by the mask, he's moved by your heart. When everyone else sees your productivity, God sees your pain. When they praise your endurance, he feels your exhaustion. You have been doing everything in your power to hold things together, and God is saying you don't have to anymore. The same God who created the universe out of chaos is not intimidated by the chaos in your life. He's not judging your weariness. He's not disappointed that you're tired. He's the kind of God who sits with you in your weakness and says, you don't have to be strong for me to be God. He specializes in showing up when your strength runs out. You've been trying to keep your faith alive while your hope feels like it's fading, and he's saying, I still see you trying. There's a beauty in the kind of tired that comes from doing right things with a weary heart. You didn't get tired because you were careless. You got tired because you kept showing up even when it hurt. You got tired because you loved people who didn't always love you back. You got tired because you prayed when you didn't have the words. You got tired because you kept believing when you couldn't see the evidence. That's not weakness, that's faith in motion. And God honors that kind of faith. Maybe life hasn't turned out the way you planned. Maybe the things you thought would bring peace only brought more pressure. Maybe you've been holding on to something that's been breaking you piece by piece, afraid that if you let it go, you'll fall apart completely. But I need you to hear this. God never intended for you to live constantly depleted. He didn't design you to survive off strength alone. He designed you to depend on him. The reason you feel invisible is because people can only see what you show them. But God doesn't need your performance to perceive your pain. He knows the version of you that nobody else does, the one behind the smile, behind the strength, behind the I'm fine. He sees the tears you wipe away before anyone can notice. He hears the prayers that never make it out of your mouth. He sees how hard you've been trying to be everything for everyone, and he's saying, you can rest now. I've got it from here. The same God who saw Hagar crying in the wilderness, the same God who saw Elijah under the tree begging for his life to end, the same God who saw Jesus sweating blood in Gethsemane, he sees you too. You're not forgotten. You're not unseen. You're not weak for being tired. You're human. And God is about to meet you right where you are, not where you pretend to be, not where you wish you were, but right in the middle of your fatigue, your frustration, and your faith that's barely hanging on. Because he's a God who doesn't just restore what you lost, he restores who you are. Asterisk, asterisk, keynote, no, too expanded into 650 words, no headings, no ending sentences. Asterisks, asterisks. Restoration doesn't start when everything gets fixed on the outside. It begins the moment you surrender what's been breaking you on this inside. We live in a world that glorifies control, that teaches us to hold everything together even when it's falling apart. But true restoration can only happen when you let go. You can't receive what God wants to give you if your hands are still gripping what's been draining you. You've been praying for God to restore you, but restoration doesn't come through resistance, it comes through release. Sometimes before God brings you out, he first asks you to lay it down. There comes a moment when you realize that your strength is not enough to fix what's broken. You've tried everything you could, you've prayed, you've fought, you've planned, and yet nothing seems to move. That's not because God isn't listening. It's because he's waiting for you to surrender. Surrender isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the recognition that you were never meant to carry the weight of outcomes. You were meant to trust the one who controls them. God doesn't need your strategy. He wants your submission. Maybe you've been trying to make sense of why certain doors closed, why some people walked away, why that opportunity didn't last. You thought those things were part of your healing, but what if God removed them because they were standing in the way of your restoration? Sometimes what feels like rejection is actually redirection. Sometimes the things you thought you lost were the things keeping you from what you truly needed. And the moment you surrender the plan you had in mind, you create room for God to release what he's had in store all along. Surrender doesn't mean giving up on what God promised. It means giving it back to him. It's saying, God, I trust you with this. I trust you with me. It's the decision to stop forcing what's not flowing and to rest in what he's doing even when you don't understand it. You don't have to manipulate what God has already ordained. If it's yours, it will not pass you by. And if it left, it wasn't meant to be a part of your restoration story. Sometimes God will let you reach the end of yourself so you can finally discover the beginning of him. You've been holding on so tightly because you thought letting go meant losing control, but the truth is you were never really in control. God was. And once you surrender, you begin to see that he's been working behind the scenes, piecing together the things you thought were shattered beyond repair. There's something sacred about surrender because it breaks your pride and builds your faith. When you finally stop trying to fix it yourself, you allow God to do what only he can do. You give him permission to step into the spaces you've been guarding out of fear. That's when healing begins. That's when peace starts to flow again. Because peace doesn't come from knowing the plan, it comes from knowing the planner. You've been asking God to restore your strength, your joy, your purpose, but he's saying, let me restore your trust first. Because trust is the foundation for restoration. You can't rebuild on ground that's still shaking with fear. You can't receive new oil in an old vessel. Surrender empties you of what's old so that you can be filled with what's divine. It clears the clutter of control so that grace can flow freely again. When you surrender, It's not about loss, it's about alignment. It's when your will aligns with God's will that restoration starts to take root. You stop striving and start resting. You stop questioning and start believing again. You realize that surrender isn't a step backward, it's a step into divine flow. It's the moment where your tears become seeds and your silence becomes sacred ground for something new to grow. God doesn't want you to pretend you're okay. He wants you to surrender the parts that aren't. He's not asking you to be strong. He's asking you to be still, because in your stillness, he moves. In your surrender, he restores. And what's coming on the other side of that release will remind you that you never lost anything worth keeping. You just made room for something better. Asterisk, asterisk, keynote, no. 3 expanded into 650 words, no headings, no ending sentences. Asterisk, asterisk. There are moments in life when the breaking feels unbearable, when you look at the pieces scattered around you and wonder how something that once held so much beauty could end up in fragments. The relationship that fell apart, the opportunity that slipped away, the dream that didn't survive, those things cut deep. You ask God why he allowed it to happen, why he didn't intervene, why he didn't protect you from the pain. But what if I told you the breaking wasn't meant to destroy you, it was meant to shape you? You see, there's a version of you that only pain could produce, a strength that only breaking could awaken, a depth that only struggle could reveal. Sometimes God allows the breaking not because he's punishing you, but because he's preparing you. You prayed for growth, and growth rarely comes wrapped in comfort. You asked God to use you, and he knew he couldn't use you fully until he stripped away what was limiting you. We often want God's anointing without his refining, his promise without his process. But the truth is, what breaks you often builds you in ways ease never could. Every storm has a lesson. Every heartbreak carries revelation. Every loss holds transformation. You may not see it now, but there's purpose in the pain. What hurts you is actually working for you. The enemy wanted to convince you that you were broken beyond repair, but God is using that very breaking as the foundation for your restoration. Think about a seed. It has to break open before it grows. The breaking is not the end of the seed, it's the beginning of new life. In the same way, your breaking is not your burial, it's your birth. Something new is being born from the very thing that tried to destroy you. There are some lessons that peace can't teach you. Only pain can teach you how to pray deeper, love purer, and stand stronger. It's in the breaking that you learn what's real. You find out who's truly for you, what really matters, and who God truly is. Because when everything else falls apart, God becomes the only thing holding you together. And sometimes that's exactly where he wants you to depend, not on your strength, not on your understanding, but on his grace. The breaking changes your posture. It humbles you. It strips you of pride, of the need to perform, of the illusion that you're in control. You come to a place where all you have left is faith, and that's exactly where transformation begins. You see, God can't fill what's full of itself. He fills what's empty. He uses what's yielded. So maybe the breaking was never about your destruction, it was about your preparation. God was breaking the surface of your old self so that something greater could come forth. When you look back, you'll realize that every broken season carried a divine exchange. You lost something, but you gained wisdom. You cried, but you grew. You fell apart, but you also found yourself in God in a way you never had before. What once felt like an ending will later reveal itself as a beginning. God is a master at taking the pieces of what's broken and creating something even more beautiful than before. That's why he's called the potter. He knows how to mold, how to reshape, how to remake what's been shattered. So don't despise your breaking. Don't let the pain convince you that you're finished. God is not done with you. In fact, this might be the very moment he's doing his deepest work. You may not understand it now, but one day you'll look back and see that the breaking was where the becoming began, that every tear watered something sacred, that every disappointment was direction in disguise. that every no was protection. Because what broke you was never meant to end you. It was meant to awaken the power, the faith, and the resilience that was buried inside you all along. Asterisk, asterisk, keynote. No. 4 expanded into 650 words, no headings, no ending sentences. Asterisk, asterisk. There's a kind of rest that sleep can't give you. You can take a vacation, turn off your phone, and still feel empty inside, because rest isn't just the absence of work, it's the presence of peace. God's rest is different from the world's rest. The world tells you to hustle harder, push through, and earn your worth. But God whispers, come to me, and I will give you rest. It's not rest from responsibility. It's rest in the middle of responsibility. It's not the kind of rest that comes from everything being perfect. It's the kind that carries you when nothing makes sense. You've been running on fumes, trying to keep up with expectations, trying to be everything to everyone, and somewhere along the way, you lost the rhythm of your soul. You forgot that God didn't create you to live constantly exhausted, chasing validation that can't fill you. You were created to flow in grace, not to drown in pressure. There's a difference between being busy and being fruitful. Busyness drains you, fruitfulness fulfills you. And the only way to move from busy to fruitful is to align your pace with God's presence. Sometimes rest requires realignment. You've been walking in circles, trying to fix what only God can heal, trying to control what only God can calm. But when your spirit aligns with His, everything begins to shift. His rest is not found in doing more, it's found in being still enough to hear His voice again. The kind of rest God offers doesn't just quiet your body, it resets your soul. It reintroduces you to peace that doesn't depend on people, purpose that isn't shaken by problems, and joy that no circumstance can steal. There's a reason Jesus could sleep through a storm. It wasn't because the storm wasn't real. It was because His spirit was aligned with His Father. That's what divine rest looks like. It's the ability to stay anchored in faith even when the waves are raging. It's trusting that God is still in control when everything feels out of control. It's saying, God, even if you don't calm the storm around me, calm the storm within me. That's alignment. That's peace. That's rest. You've been asking God to fix your situation, but He's trying to fix your rhythm. Because sometimes the problem isn't what's happening around you, it's what's happening within you. You've been running on your own timing, but divine rest requires divine timing. God's not rushing you, He's refining you. He's slowing you down so you can hear what He's been saying all along. The blessing you've been praying for can't land in a restless soul. Rest is not a delay, it's preparation. God pauses you before He promotes you because He knows a restless heart can't handle a restored life. When you learn to rest in God, you begin to see that His rest is not passive, it's powerful. It recharges your spirit, renews your focus, and restores your strength. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop striving for control and start trusting His plan. Because rest is not about inactivity, it's about intimacy. It's about being so connected to God that even when everything feels uncertain, your heart remains unshaken. You've been living in survival mode for too long, fighting battles that were never yours to fight. God is calling you into His rest, not just to catch your breath, but to remind you that He's the one holding your breath in the first place. You don't have to earn His peace, it's already yours. You don't have to prove you're enough. He already declared that you are. Rest is not what happens when the storm stops, it's what happens when you remember who's in the boat with you. And when you finally surrender to that kind of rest, everything changes. You stop measuring your worth by your work. You stop chasing approval and start cherishing His presence. You move from constant striving to steady trusting. Because when your soul aligns with God's rhythm, your heart finds home again. And that's the kind of rest that restores everything the world tried to take from you. Asterisk, asterisk, keynote, no 5, expanded into 650 words, no headings, no ending sentences. Asterisk, asterisk. Divine recovery is not just about getting back what you lost. It's about stepping into something greater than what you ever had before. God doesn't just restore, he multiplies. He doesn't just bring you to the starting line, he positions you for your breakthrough. Sometimes we get so focused on what's missing that we forget to look at what God is preparing. Restoration is never ordinary. It's not about making you whole in a way that looks like before. It's about making you whole in a way that looks like God. You've endured seasons that tested your faith, stretched your patience, and drained your strength. You've walked through valleys where hope seemed dim and dreams felt delayed. And now God is moving to give you not just a return, but a renewal. Not just a replacement, but a revelation. He's preparing to do more than fix what was broken. He's preparing to transform your life. Sometimes the restoration God offers is so much bigger than what you expected that it can feel overwhelming. But that's exactly the point. He's not restoring for the sake of restoration. He's restoring to elevate you to a new level of purpose. Recovery begins when you stop looking at what's behind and start fixing your eyes on what's ahead. You may have lost relationships, opportunities, or seasons of your life that you treasured. But God is not limited by what has been taken from you. He is already working on what is coming. And it's far beyond anything you can imagine. You have to believe that the pain you went through was not in vain. Every tear, every disappointment, every setback was a seed planted for the harvest you are about to reap. God's restoration is intentional. It's not random luck or coincidence. He sees the trials that tried to keep you down, the lies that whispered you were finished, and the circumstances that tried to convince you that all hope was lost. And yet his promise remains. I will restore you and make all things new. This is not just a comfort, it is a guarantee. You are on the cusp of divine favor, a season where what was broken will be made beautiful, where what was lost will be returned, and where what was delayed will arrive on time.